Acquitted, but never forgiven. Lizzie Borden walks out of the courtroom a free woman, but Fall River slams its doors behind her. Whispers turn to stares. Stares turn to cold shoulders. And inside the grand new mansion she calls Maplecroft, rumors echo louder than footsteps.
Was she a murderer who slipped justice? A scapegoat for a crime nobody else could solve? Or a woman doomed by a scandal to haunt her in her own hometown? In episode 7, we dive into Lizzie's life after the verdict. The parties, the betrayal, the secrets, the isolation, and the mystery of a woman who won her freedom but lost her world.
I'm Jimbo.
And I'm Dustin. And this is Dark Discoveries.
Welcome back to Dark Discoveries, everyone. Discoveries.
Dark Discovers. Come on.
Hey, what's lurking in the dark discovers stays in the dark discovers. But welcome back to Dark Discoveries, everybody. So after 6 episodes of this buildup, from Lizzie's early life to her family struggles to the murders and then that explosive trial of last episode, today we step into the aftermath. Episode 7 is all about what happened after the courtroom doors closed, after the jury pronounced those 2 little words, not guilty, and after Lizzie walked away a free woman. But freedom, at least in her case, was complicated. She gained legal independence, but lost social acceptance. She inherited wealth, but forfeited reputation. And though she escaped prison, she entered a different kind of confinement, the confinement of being a notorious name in a small, judgmental town. Lizzie's post-trial life is a fascinating blend of privilege and isolation, bold choices and quiet suffering, defiance and loneliness. Today, we explore her world after acquittal, how she lived, how she was treated, and how she became both a recluse and an icon in her own lifetime.
And that's what makes this episode so compelling. We're not talking about a villain or a saint, but about a woman who was stamped by scandal for the rest of her life. Whether she was innocent or guilty almost becomes secondary to how people treated her. Fall River didn't want her back. Society didn't know what to do with her. Reporters still kept an eye on her. Neighbors whispered, friends disappeared, and Lizzie, instead of shrinking into anonymity, whatever you want to say, made a bold choice. She bought a mansion. She traveled. She reinvented herself as Lizbeth, not Elizabeth, but Lizbeth. Man, it's been like 7 episodes since I spelled out a word.
Lizbeth.
Distancing from her identity that she had become synonymous with as a murderer. But even her attempts to rebuild and created new controversies, new rumors, new shadows. Episode 7 just isn't the epilogue. It's the chapter that shows us the human cost of becoming a legend.
Dustin,
It's almost more becoming part of infamy. I mean, you're more infamous than a legend.
Dustin, how hard do you think it was for her to go straight back into the home where she obviously, or didn't, commit these murders and, and just try to get back into a normal routine of life? I don't know if she ever did.
I don't know how long it was before she bought, the new mansion, but, you have this small house and the way it was going, you had to go through rooms to get to your room, and everything you're to have is going to be bare minimum a reminder of the life that you had up until that point. Whether there's horrors and things that get triggered from after the murders, you have all that trauma from that house from, the time you were a child till that point, 32 years of memories of good, the bad, the ugly. And it just sounds like it was probably a little too much to take in. So you want to start fresh. But to her, I don't think it was so much starting fresh. It was now she lives on top of that hill where all the rich people live, where she always thought she was destined to be.
And she finally made it.
And she probably had some type of indoor plumbing at that point. So it wasn't an improvement.
Right. So when Lizzie returned to Fall River after her acquittal in June 1893, she expected some level of vindication, right? I mean, wouldn't you? A chance to reclaim her old life. I'm going to attend church again. I'm going to rejoin charitable, societies.
But see, you go to church, that's where the most judgmental people were.
But
that's the thing.
She wants to get returned to a sense of normalcy that she had in her life, right?
It's never going to be the same.
No, because the town had different ideas. Fall River may have been relieved that the trial was over, but you know what? The people weren't ready to forgive her, and they're surely not ready to forget. So the whispers started almost immediately. Oh, she did it. Money brought her freedom. The jury was too soft. So Lizzie stepped back into her own home, only to discover that the community she had belonged to for decades no longer wanted her. Instead of being greeted with sympathy, she was met with suspicion and coldness. Her church, which she had dedicated so much of her life to, treated her differently. Women avoided her. Social invitations disappeared. Charity work she once enjoyed became impossible to do. She was legally innocent, but socially condemned.
The only thing that she could have done, it was a national case, was to just pack up and leave town. Well, because your life will never be the same.
Well, she does end up doing that kind of, but she also changes her name, right? Trying to get back out there.
Just changing the name, they know your face. You could move to a different state or a different town a little farther away, and people will be like, is that her? And you could maybe play it off. But, as long as you're in that same town, you're not going to ever have the life that you're looking for.
But let's face it, Dustin. She was, the jury came back and said not guilty. We still don't know if she did it or not. Correct.
And for her, she maybe thought that Maplecroft, when she bought that house, it would have gave her everything that she wanted, and people would have looked at her, okay, she's innocent, let's move on. But that
kind of backfired.
So this kind of social exile cuts deeper than prison for somebody like Lizzie or Elizabeth now. She wasn't just accused of murder. She was accused of violating every moral code within the Victorian society that they held sacred. Killing a parent, especially a father, was seen as an unnatural, that it placed her outside normal human boundaries. So even though the verdict cleared her, the community essentially said, we don't believe it. And Lizzie felt that coldness every time she walked outside. People stared, conversation stopped when she entered the room. Children were told not to go near her. She wasn't thrown into a cell. She was pushed out of society. And that's what's fascinating, is that she didn't respond by hiding. Instead, she went the opposite direction. She decided that if she couldn't have acceptance, she would have autonomy. And that decision led her to one of the most defining moments of her post-trial life. The purchase of the mansion that would become her new sanctuary and her new symbol. So a new house on top of the hill is going to make all these problems go away. But then you realize you're just in this big old house by yourself. Nobody's with you.
So within months of her acquittal, Lizzie used her inheritance to purchase a grand home in Fall River's elite neighborhood, The Hill. The house named Maplecroft was a stark contrast to the cramped, outdated 2nd Street residence where the murders occurred. It had spacious rooms, modern amenities, artistic decor, and a level of elegance Lizzie had been denied her entire life under her father, Andrew's frugal rules. Maplecroft was more than a house. It was a statement. It said, I am not hiding. I am not shrinking. I am rebuilding. building, which good for her. She's trying to rebuild her life. So Lizzie decorated it beautifully. She hosted occasional gatherings. She employed servants and lived with Emma in separate suites. For the first time in her life, she controlled her environment. She controlled her money. She controlled her identity. And for a brief period, Maplecroft became the place where she could breathe freely.
But Maplecroft was also a double-edged sword. While it gave Lizzie her independence and comfort, it also fueled rumors. People said she only has that house because she murdered her parents. They whispered that she spent the blood money. When she entertained guests, especially artists, actors, or musicians, the townspeople called it scandalous. When she traveled, they called her arrogant. When she bought expensive clothing, they said she was flaunting her guilt. No matter what Lizzie did, it fed the narrative to Fall River had already written her. Maplecroft, for all its beauty, became a gilded cage. And perhaps the saddest part is Lizzie genuinely wanted to enjoy her new life. She wanted to live, not just survive. But her community refused to let her live free, at least free of her past. The mansion gave her a physical distance, but emotionally, she was still trapped under the weight of the trial.
See, and this is one thing that I don't understand about this. Her family was rich. If her father wouldn't have been so frugal, this is the way they would have been living to begin with. They would have had that house on top of the hill. They would have been up there in Maplecroft. They would have been to all these social circles. And I think it's just because of that her father died, and as frugal as he was, and her mother died, or her stepmother died. Now that she's trying to live the life that she was rightfully inherited to do, that should have been,
at least
been
in her
done.
own mind.
Well, I mean, that she should have been living all along. It's just her dad wouldn't do it, right?
That in her mind, that's where she should have been. Just because you got the money doesn't mean that's what you're destined to. But in her mind, it was. I mean,
well, if everybody else from your family that is rich like that, and they are all up there, then society tells us that's where technically she should have been as well, especially at this time.
But when you're more of a blue collar worker than a white collar, you kind of have that separation. You go up there, maybe he lived somewhere else, but they were poor, but at one point, but he made himself, but maybe it's because he just felt that he was being looked down upon from everybody else.
Right. So,
you know how it goes when you got, you've got CEOs or you've got, high affluent people. If somebody like me or you comes into that community or into those gated neighborhoods, you're going to be kind of judged, and you're going to be, probably not invited to everything because you're the outsider.
Right. So let's remember, growing up, Lizzie was pretty close to her sister, Emma, and she's probably one of the only ones that really stayed by her side through a lot of this. So let's talk a little bit about this relationship. So for the first decade after the trial, so that's 10 years for people like Dustin that don't understand what a decade is.
Oh, come on. We talked about being nice and polite, Jimbo.
Lizzie and Emma lived together at Maplecroft. They had survived the ordeal as a united front. They had endured the whispers, the hostility, the isolation all together. But even strong bonds have limits. And in 1905, something happened. Something neither sister ever publicly explained that caused Emma to leave Maplecroft and never speak to Lizzie ever again.
So that's what really adds to this whole thing. Is it because, a normal row wouldn't cause you to move out?
Right. Especially after being best friends your whole life and living together for 10 years.
Yeah. You live 10 years. You're going to have an idea if your sister did or did not kill your parents. And most likely, I'm going to say that she knew. She knew the truth. But it seems like she was more the victim in this, Emma was, because you don't hear her name being ran through the trial. I don't know how society treated her, but even if she was okay outside of the house where she could go live life, by living there, it kind of put her in the same spot as Lizzie, that, you're isolated and another thing, here she is also older than Lizzie and not married,
But what can be so bad that you never talk to her ever again? Right?
Some stuff is about to surface, and I don't think that's enough. But
No.
given the time, it was a big deal.
Right. So Emma, she moved to New Hampshire and she refused contact. She's like, hey, don't even contact me. I don't even want to talk. The exact cause remains one of the greatest mysteries of the case, but several theories have emerged. One revolves around Lizzie's growing social life, especially her friendship with actress Nance O'Neill. Victorian society viewed actresses as morally questionable, and Lizzie's relationship with Nance was intensely scrutinized. Some claimed it was romantic. Some said it was improper. Others believed Lizzie was simply craving companionship and artistic stimulation. Whatever the truth, Emma disproved deeply enough to sever ties completely.
And so this happened at there was a party that they were over there, and whatever happened, whatever said, whatever was done, whatever she's seen was enough that she moved out that night. It wasn't, as far as we know from the outside, it wasn't a slow build. It probably was a slow build that she left. But whatever happened was deep enough that she cut ties right then and there. And to turn your back on family like that, especially with what you guys had been through, had to be deep. Emma's departure marks one of the saddest turning points in Lizzie's post-trial life. Emma was the only person who fully understood what Lizzie had endured. The trial, the social exile, the suspicion. If anybody could have been in her corner for life, it should have been her sister. But whatever happened between them, it shattered that bond. And it left Lizzie truly alone. Her social circle had shrunk. Her friends were few and far between. She had money, sure, but she didn't have acceptance. She had a mansion, but no family inside of it. Emma later hinted that her conscience couldn't allow her to stay, which fueled speculation that Emma had learned something late in life that changed her perspective on the murders. Other historians argue that the split had nothing to do with guilt, only the lifestyle differences. But regardless of the cause, Emma's departure solidified the narrative that Lizzie's life, no matter how luxurious, was forever haunted. It's going to be big. Your sister's turning her back. I can't see it being lifestyle choices. It's a huge deal if you're in that type of relationship with another woman at this time. But maybe was that enough to just bury the hatchet in her back? That's like, look, I'm already exiled. Whatever little bit of hope I had for a normal life is completely gone.
Or is it, let me get out of Dodge before she puts a hatchet in my back? You know what I mean? It could be.
And I don't know if your notes are going to go into this, but they never spoke again, but she did get interviewed before she died. Emma did. And she still talked positive about her. So it's not like that she was bashing her later. So it's, just when you think you have maybe something figured out or going right.
It's really weird, man. It's really weird.
It just changes. It's, you couldn't write a story with this many different turns.
So one of the most fascinating aspects of Lizzie's later life is how she began to reinvent herself. Around the turn of the century, she started using the name Lizbeth instead of Lizzie. A subtle but symbolic shift, as if she were trying to shed the identity etched into the nursery rhyme. She traveled to Boston, New York, and even internationally. She embraced culture, theater, and artistry. She attended plays, supported performers, and hosted gatherings with individuals far outside the conservative norms of Fall River. Lizzie Borden was not the obedient Victorian daughter. She was a wealthy woman living life on her own terms. And yet, every step she took outside the mold made the town judge her even more harshly. But people accused her of being extravagant, frivolous, immoral, or attention-seeking. But what's remarkable is that Elizabeth didn't stop. She continued living the way she wanted, quietly, elegantly, and defiantly. You know what this reminds me of, Dustin? This reminds me of a teenager that has been living under their parents' rules for so long, and then they finally move out and they just go hog wild, right? They just live their life how they want to do for like, let's say 4 years. And then they come back down to their senses. You know what I mean? And by Lizzie being already in her, 32 when she supposedly committed these murders, that's a lot of ground to make up from her teenage years and her younger life that she has to sow these wild oats, it seems, or wild seeds.
And how much has her emotional maturity been stunted?
Right.
It's just like Michael Jackson. He was put in a situation to where as a child, it was very strict and structured and he had to do things a certain way. So like I said, we're going to probably cover this too. We're going to cover all kinds of stuff, hopefully, but it stunted, I think, his maturity to where, you're looking to get that childhood back and that experience back. So you're going to go a little crazy at times. And, as long as you don't run out of money, you can go back to Maplecroft and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part of Lizzie's story that often gets overlooked. The agency she carved out for herself, while the world tried to reduce her to a monstrous character, she built a new identity. She chose art over isolation. She chose friendship, travel, and culture over hiding in shame. Was she happy? It's hard to say. But she was determined not to live life in Fall River. She wanted to live. I mean, she wasn't going to let that small town dictate the rest of her life. Her relationship in the theater world, with especially actresses, made her an object of gossip. But it also gave her a space where people accepted her for who she was. Or at least they didn't judge her for who she might have been. In her later years, she became a paradox, a recluse who traveled, a wealthy woman criticized by wealthy neighbors, a cultural patron scorned by her own community. Her independence was both her triumph and her tragedy.
So, Dustin, I want you to find me something that said she traveled internationally. I want you to find me a Lizzie Borden passport for my studio. Okay. I need a Lizzie Borden official passport of Lizzie Borden. No replicas. I want the original thing.
So this is the prop you want from this whole thing.
Yes. All right. So rumors shadowed Lizzie from the moment she walked free out of that courtroom. People claim she confessed privately to friends. Can you imagine being a friend where she's like, yeah, I did it. And you're her friend at this party or something? Others said she was violent or unhinged behind closed doors. Some believe she practiced dark rituals or even held seances. Pure fiction, of course, but gossip doesn't need truth to survive. There were rumors she paid off witnesses, rumors she possessed the murder weapon, rumors she kept blood-soaked clothing hidden somewhere in Maplecroft. Most of these claims were invented, exaggerated, or distorted by time. Yet they fed the legend that continues to this day. The most persistent rumor, however, was the one about her relationship with Nance O'Neill. Many historians now believe the two women shared a deep emotional bond. Whether romantic or not, it scandalized the era. And Lizzie never corrected the rumors. She let speculation swirl, sometimes fueling it by appearing publicly with people society considered undesirable. It was as she knew she would be judged no matter what, so she chose to live in defiance of the whispers. Good for her. You got these people talking behind your back. You got them spreading rumors. Lean into it. Let them think what they want to think. I think that's amazing of Lizzie.
And you know how it is if you try to defend yourself, you're guilty.
Right.
If you don't defend yourself, you're guilty.
Right.
So why waste your time and your energy and your mental state on it? Just go do you.
Right. People are going to say what they want to say anyway.
That's the motto of my life. You do you. Just do what makes you happy. As the whispers grew only harsher over time, children dared each other to run past Maplecroft at night. Adults told stories about hearing ghostly hatchet sounds from her windows. Why would you hear it from Maplecroft? Like, you'd hear it from, the other house. You'd hear some hatcheting going on. The legend of Lizzie Borden was being born in real time. Right during her lifetime, she became the living embodiment of a folk villain, someone people feared and fixated on, even without proof. And Lizzie, for all her strength, felt the weight of that gossip. She withdrew more in her final years, her social life shrinking as age and illness set in. But the rumors never stopped. Even after her death, they intensified. And that's the heartbreaking irony. The more she tried to live a normal life, the less normal her legacy became. Fall River turned her into a ghost long before she died.
And that's so sad, man. That's so sad that she could never get accepted by society just because of something that she was acquitted for or were found not guilty for. But it's like everybody has, you're always guilty in the court of public opinion. So some people just can't get over that prejudice and hang on to that all these years.
Yep. And people's egos are, even if you think that you're wrong, you're going to stick by your guns and stay with what your initial stance was because you don't want to go back on what you said.
Right. So Elizabeth Borden lived out the remainder of her life mostly in seclusion at Maplecroft. She suffered health problems in her later years, including gallbladder issues and chronic illness. Despite her wealth, she lived quietly, away from prying eyes. She died on June 1st, 1927, at the age of only 66, less than a month before her sister Emma passed away as well. The sisters, once inseparable, died estranged. Lizzie left money to animal charities, close friends, and staff who had remained loyal to her. She did not leave anything at all to Fall River, the town that had abandoned her long ago. Good for you. Her funeral was small, quiet, almost secretive. No mourners filled the streets. No crowds gathered. The woman whose name had dominated national headlines for decades slipped into the grave without fanfare.
And yet, in death, Lizzie became larger than ever. Her legend grew. The house became a landmark. The nursery rhymes cemented her name into cultural memory. Movies, books, documentaries, hell, even today, podcasts are all fed the fascination. But the real Lizzie, the one who struggled, defied, loved and suffered, faded behind in the myth. Whether she was innocent or guilty, her life after acquittal stands a testament to how society can imprison someone without walls. She lived in luxury but died in isolation. She won in court but lost her place in the community. And that duality, legal freedom, social confinement, is the essence of the Lizzie Borden story. You know what they say, I told the wife, I was like, I hate when I die, all the stuff I've collected and I get enjoyment out of is just stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's nobody here, it's just stuff. It doesn't keep you company. It doesn't make you happy. Yeah, you've got money, but you can buy some happiness when you go travel and do that. But at the end of the day, that happiness is only like skin deep. You've got the isolation and not having the people around you that you had before. And you had the church and you had all kinds of different things. And now that's all gone. It was never, ever, ever going to come back. Maybe a little bit in the beginning, just so people could fuel their odd fascination with her to maybe get close and to see if they could figure something out. But most likely just they were ostracized and everybody moved on, and just it was easier to excommunicate her than it was to try to include her now. Episode 7 closes one chapter, but it opens a door to the next. The theories, the conspiracies, the alternate suspects, and the secrets that continue to haunt this case.
Today, we explored Lizzie's post-trial life, a life filled with contradictions, bold choices, heartbreak, and reinvention. She may have walked free, but she never escaped the shadow of August 4th, 1892, and that shadow still stretches across American history.
Next time in episode 8, we're diving deep into the conspiracy theories, the forgotten suspects, the hidden motives, the family cover-ups, police incompetence, and the alternate narratives that try to explain what really happened inside the house. If you think the case is strange now, just wait until you hear all the theories. Episode 8's where the mystery becomes a maze. And remember, the deeper you dive.
the darker it gets.